Welcome back to the Christianity and Business Podcast, an initiative of the Archie W. Dunham College of Business at Houston Christian University. I'm your host, Darren Shear, and this is a show that helps Christian business leaders to integrate biblical values into business. On today's episode, we're joined by Alan Barnhart. Alan is the CEO of Barnhart Crane and Rigging, which is in the business of moving heavy stuff. And I'm talking about stuff that's hundreds and thousands of tons, not on 18-wheelers, but in some cases on 150-wheelers. Barnhart Crane and Rigging has grown to be one of the largest heavy lift and heavy transport organizations in the United States, with more than 40 locations across the country and a nationwide reputation for solving problems. Mind over matter is what they say. And he and his brother Eric are really living legends, in my view, particularly among Christian business leaders. Alan and Eric and their families decided to give 100% of their highly successful business to charity to keep wealth from taking over their lives. About 50% of all company earnings are donated immediately to charity, and the remaining 50% is used to grow the business. And in 2007, if that wasn't enough, they gave the entire company to National Christian Foundation, which is make sure that the money goes to support a lot of the ministries that are doing really great work for the kingdom around the world. And so he still runs its daily operations, correct, Alan?
Yeah.
And but he and his brothers, they will never see the accrued value and kept none of it. Alan, welcome to the Christianity and Business Podcast.
Great to be here, Darren. Thank you.
So, of all the movements your company has accomplished, which one are you most proud of?
Oh, we've done a lot of things. I think years ago, we were part of the emergency response on the I-10 bridge when a hurricane came through and wrecked it down in Florida. And to be part of getting that bridge going much sooner than they expected, I think was gratifying because it was a huge impact on that community. Most of our work is behind plant gates, working at power plants and oil refineries and things like that. And none of them individually are staggering. I think just being part of supporting the infrastructure of our country, I think it's a positive thing to be doing. And the lights come on and the fuel gets refined because we're part of that process, and so it's gratifying to be doing that.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has actually seen one of those movements in transit, it would be staggering to us. Yeah. I'll never forget the first time I saw, and really the only time I can remember seeing the giant fin off of one of those wind power turbines, and I was like, "What on earth is this?" I was like, I know they don't have aircraft this big, and then it dawned on me that's probably what it was. In fact, it was probably one of your folks that was one of your teams that was moving it. But it's amazing work that you're doing. When did you first realize God wanted to be involved in your work in the marketplace?
When I was getting out of college, I was trying to figure out what to do next in life, and some people were saying, you ought to go to seminary or go on staff with Young Life, go into full-time Christian ministry, do something significant. And that was sort of and I prayed about that. And I said, God, I want to do whatever you want me to do. And I came to the conclusion that all of us who are followers of Jesus are in full-time ministry. Some of us draw our paycheck from a charity or a church, but a lot of us are working in the secular business, but we're using our skills and gifts full-time in God's service. And I felt God had gifted me more in the area of business and engineering than he had in preaching or counseling. So I came to the conclusion that my full-time ministry was going to be in the construction business. And so that was really a decision I started to make during college years, and then and then came to work for the family business right out of college, and have been doing that ever since. I have a very boring resume. I've worked for the same place for 40 years. So
So, and you've done some really radical things for the Lord. I mean, where did you learn this? A lot of people even that grew up in Christian like, were your parents Christians?
My folks weren't believers when we were growing up. But I guess my source, I read a really good book. It's called the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's a bestseller. And but I read through the Bible right after I got out of college, focusing on business because that's the path I was going on, and about money and man, the Bible had so much to say about it, and I came to the conclusion that business success could be really dangerous. The guy that built the bigger barns, it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. All kinds of verses. The verses in First Timothy, if you want to, people who want to get rich fall into a temptation and plunge themselves into ruin and destruction, and all these verses that were really scary for me as a young guy who was wanting to serve the Lord, and at the same time felt I was moving into business. So we're really thankful that God gave us those verses, those concepts. Jesus warned, I think, 10 times more about money than anything else. And we were just reading those warnings and saying, man, we got to be careful about this. This is a dangerous thing. And so we started thinking, how can we put safeguards in our life so that just in case our business is successful, it doesn't hurt us. And so that was the genesis of our thoughts as to why to structure things the way we did. And we're so thankful that we did at that point. Before my brother and I became partners, we made the decision about ownership. Technically, we still owned each owned half the company, but our commitment was that we were stewards, not owners, that God owned it. And then secondly, the concept of limiting our lifestyle and not getting caught up in riches. And so to putting a cap on our lifestyle, breaking the connection between our income and our lifestyle, was a huge decision. And we didn't even think that much about it at the time. We thought it was a safeguard. As it turned out, we had no idea what was going to happen with the company, and it's grown so much. And my brother and I have now been partners for 37 years. We've never argued about money. And we just find that so many families really struggle in that area, not usually because there's not enough money, but because there's too much. And we just feel very thankful that God gave us those safeguards so that we could set ourselves up so that business success wasn't detrimental.
Yeah. Was there a particular flashpoint moment or experience that really just instilled this conviction that this is what you guys needed to do with the company? Or was it more of certainly it was a progressive thing, but was there like a certain moment or something you just saw in another business owner, or or just a particular verse that landed on you a certain way at a certain time?
The chapter Luke 12 and 1 Timothy 6 are pretty key chapters that I think are definitely worth reading, with some real warnings in there. I'd say the formation of the company and the conversations around that with our wives, praying together, committing together that this is what we were going to do, those were pivotal moments. And I think if we had not locked that down, if we had decided to let's just see how things go and each year decide what we're going to do next, I think it would have led to a lot of conflict. I think it was pivotal that we staked things down in advance before we became partners. And that was very helpful for us.
Yeah. So there's, so much money that's been given away to ministries. What are some of your favorite just accomplishments of what the Lord has done through the charitable giving of the company?
It's I think I like the story of the widow's mite, and people get really impressed with big numbers and a lot of commas and zeros. And I don't think God's impressed with that, frankly. I mean, we're channeling out money that God is providing. We haven't given away a nickel that God hasn't given us. And I don't really think we work hard to not chase the warm and fuzzies, that, trying to do things that just make us feel good. I think being a steward of money and distributing it to the kingdom is a complex task. It's hard work. And so it's been a joy to be part of the lives of brothers and sisters who are working in hard places in the world, and they are so much more godly than I am, so much more committed than I am, and God allows us to be a small part of what they're doing. And so meeting some of those people and just getting to know them and hearing their stories and just kind of being in awe of what they're doing, it's been a real treat. And so I focus mainly on India, and so most of what I've seen lately has been in India. I've traveled to 60 different countries, so I've been to a lot of places, and we decided pretty early on that there was a disproportionate need internationally. And so while there's plenty of needs everywhere, in every city, and we do things, we fund work in every city where we have a branch, but the bulk of the money goes to some hard places internationally because we felt that's what God was calling us to do.
Yeah. And so most of what we've been talking about is what you do with the profits and the giving and so forth. In terms of the actual operations of the company, what's one of your favorite scriptures related to business and entrepreneurship that really informs the way you operate?
There's a verse in Colossians 3:23 and 24 that says, whatever you do, do your work heartily as unto the Lord. So to just keep pushing, realizing that you're not on a treadmill. You are doing things, you're serving the Lord, and we would say the purpose of our company is to glorify God. And part of that is through doing constructive work. And so we think coming up with a good strategy or completing a good project can be glorifying to God, just like writing a good song can be, or preaching a good sermon. And so it's using our skills and gifts in His service. So, there's a verse that talks in, I think it's in James, where it talks about planning and how basically it's kind of mocking someone for saying, I'm going to go to this city and I'm going to do business and make money. And what we should be saying is, if God wills, this is what I'm going to do, as opposed to, it's instead of it being my plan, we are stewards operating God's plan. And so I thought that was that's one that we read as we're starting our planning process often, is to say, let's keep in mind that, there's lots of verses in Proverbs and something about this, man comes up with ideas, God changes it. God is the main actor. And
yeah. And you mentioned Colossians 3:23. I mean, really the idea that Jesus is on the receiving end of everything that we do in business. And how do you, how pervasive is that throughout the culture of your company? Because I'm sure not everybody, you don't require that you have to be a Christian to work here, but how do you get the sense that this really does define our culture, aside from what you do as the leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we list our purpose statement as to say the purpose of our company is to glorify God through developing people and encouraging them to use their skills and gifts in His service through constructive work, personal witness, ministry funding. So that's our purpose statement. We would say to our employees, we don't expect you to salute that statement. That's for your information. That's why we're doing what we're doing. But we don't. You can believe anything or nothing and work at this company. You don't have to share our theology. You do have to share our culture, and the fact that our culture happens to be informed by Scripture. It doesn't mean that it's that it's something you have to impose on a non-believer. It's good. It's servant leadership. It's fairness, honesty, hard work. Those are all elements of our culture. And frankly, there are a fair number of Christians that don't fit that culture. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole bunch of non-Christians that do. And so we would say to someone, you don't have to share our theology, but you do need to esteem our culture. You do need to embrace our culture. And the higher you are in the organization from a leadership standpoint, the more you have to conform to the culture. And we've had some very successful people that couldn't grasp servant leadership and couldn't stay at our company because of that.
Yeah. And I was reading that you have, and you said it's really kind of your secret sauce, that you have a decentralized management structure, and you use a branch scorecard to evaluate how you're doing across the company. And I'm sure it just every movement has its own set of problems that if you're not really there on the ground, diving into that, you can't just kind of make those decisions from the top. How do you evaluate that this really is what is defining your culture, as opposed to this is just what we have in the purpose statement? Like, what is there a story you could tell, or an example where this is evidence that we're really getting it as a company?
It's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of individual stories of people loving each other, caring for each other. We have corporate chaplains that come and meet with all of our people. We send people to marriage conferences and have counseling, and we have a benevolent fund, we have about 20 different things that we use that we call Barnhart Cares, where we're caring for our people, and they're caring for each other. So it's, I think the culture it's a blue collar culture. It is lots of non-believers. We have probably 1,700 employees, and many of them are not followers of Jesus. But I think we really kind of think about it in terms of making progress. We've acquired 26 different companies, and each time it takes time to instill that culture. And it's you don't flip a switch. You don't read a document and it's there. It takes constant time, and some faster than others. So we don't do it perfectly, and it's a process. And we have regional directors that are part of their purpose is instilling our culture in each of the branches that they oversee, and that takes time. And so we spend a lot of time talking about our core values, and trying to instill those in people. We just had our engineering conference, and some of the engineers were not annoyed, but they were like, we just didn't talk about engineering at all. We talked all about core values the whole time, and so that's a big part of the effort, is to try to instill culture. It's not something that happens quickly. You got to repeat it over and over again. The book, The Advantage, was a good book for us about that. And he says, you got to repeat it until you're so tired of it. You think it's monotonous, but just, you got to continue to speak it. And, it just takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. How do you evaluate that we're getting it?
We have a scoring system that we call branch health. Is the branch healthy? There are some financial elements to that, but there are, how is the branch leadership team functioning as a team? And we have 10 diagnostic questions to answer that question, and they get a score for that. And how are they doing on developing their people? And we have 10 diagnostic questions for that. And how are they doing on developing their market? And we have questions on that. So they're subjective things, but they're questions that get scored, and then that rolls up to a branch health score. And that's what we're focused on, more so than just the financial results of the branch. That matters. But if they're not healthy, they could have a good year, but they won't have a good decade. And if they're healthy, they can be good permanently. And so we want to really work on branch health.
Yeah. Alan, what's something that you're working on now that you're really excited about and that you really want our listeners to know about?
The thing that's relatively new for us is a thing called the Kingdom Companies Group. As we looked at what we did 15 years ago in putting the stock of our company into a charity, which we didn't see as radical at all. We saw it as just a natural extension of, God owns everything that we have, including this company. From a whole variety of reasons, there were some great advantages to having the stock owned by a charity. From a estate tax issue, from a succession planning issue, even from a every year the tax rate is substantially lower because of that. So we just saw lots of reasons that a charity holding the stock had great advantages over us holding the stock. The other companies are seeing that as well. And so we have now 5 companies that are part of what we call the Kingdom Companies Group, and we're developing this. And because we're now under common ownership, so to speak, God owns each of these companies, we are on the same team and we help each other a lot. And so so I'm meeting with the CEOs of these other 4 teams quite often. And we have a board of trustees that are overseeing, technically the different trusts own these companies, but the voting rights of the companies, which is 1% of the stock or voting rights, are held by a voting trust. And we have trustees of that trust so that the thing can go on forever. So this board of trustees will self-replicate. So it's a relatively new thing that I'm working on. And I think it's going to provide a platform for others who are interested in this. And it'd be a small minority that are, but I think there are some great reasons to do it. One of the good reasons is we pool our profits together and distribute them to the kingdom together through a process. And so all the companies have members that are part of this decision-making process to where are we going to send the money? And that's not an easy thing to do. And a lot of people really struggle with how to do that well. And this provides an answer for that. And so we're doing that in 6 different teams, but each of the teams is made up from people of different companies, and it's been an exciting adventure. So.
Wow, that is absolutely exciting. So that would certainly be. Where can people go to learn more about that?
Yeah, I'd say just give me a call or send me an email or whatever. We don't have a website yet. It's pretty new, and it's been going 4 or 5 years now, and I think we're just to the point of saying we would be open to conversations with others that would have an interest. Right now, all these companies are industrial service companies. It's probably not something that would be the right thing for a high-tech company or for a restaurant, or we just don't know enough to be very helpful. I mean, one of the things we do is we kind of provide an emergency succession plan for each other. If somebody gets hit by a truck, we have people that can step in. In fact, all of the companies besides Barnhart are run by people that were employees of a different company, and when there was a CEO change, they stepped in and did this thing. So it's kind of evolved, and I think that's one of the things that we offer. But yeah, so two thoughts. One is there may be companies that would be interested in joining the Kingdom Companies Group, and we would love to talk with them about that. There may be others that would think, I should do something like that within my sphere, to have a Kingdom Companies Group for high-tech companies or for manufacturing companies. Those are companies that we don't know that much about. And so I don't know that we'd be all that helpful, but doing things together like that, there's some great advantage to it. And frankly, having your company owned by a charitable trust has tremendous advantages that most people never think about, and very few disadvantages. I mean, the only really disadvantage is you can't take the money back and consume it personally. I mean, you can still get a salary, you can still have bonus plans, you can still have long-term incentives, you can do all kinds of things that it doesn't tie your hands much at all, except that if the company's ever sold, you can't put that in your pocket. You actually can put it into another organization and reinvest it and buy other companies if you wanted to. It's not that you don't have access to use that money, but it's no longer yours personally. And that's really the only downside. And there's huge upsides that we save millions of dollars every year in taxes, and there's some really huge upsides.
Yeah. And so you have six kids, is that right?
6 kids, yeah.
And so how do they feel about that? What's been their response?
Yeah, are the kids pissed off that you gave away their inheritance? It's really been a non-issue. I mean, my kids don't feel like they're the victims of this. We never felt that the company was ours.
Yeah.
They never felt like it was theirs. So it was not like I'd say expectation management is huge. And our kids never expected to have a big inheritance. They never expected that the company was going to we were going to divide it up 6 ways for them. There was just never a thought of that for them. And so none of our kids are embittered at all by what we did. 2 of our kids work in the company. The other 4 do not. And it's, there's no pressure to work in the company. You don't have to come here to kind of get your piece of the action. It's not, there's none of that going on, that dynamic. So it's, I think many people ask that question, and I really love it when one of the kids is standing there and I'd say, why don't you answer the question instead of me? And what we found is the kids are not, there was not unmet expectations. And so there's not a bitterness at all. And
yeah.
I think lack of communication can lead to some bitterness there. But we wanted to leave our kids a rich inheritance of faith, of work ethic, of education. You give them the tools to succeed in life, but they don't need the outcome. They don't need I think we also wanted to give them things like struggle and pain, because those are things that are shaping and to try to protect your kids from. I hear a lot of people say, I don't want my kids to have to go through what I went through. I kind of say, why not? I mean, it was part of what made you who you are. It was that struggle is part of the good stuff in life. And it's hard, but it's hard and good. And doing hard things is not a bad thing. So we want to let our kids go through struggles and make their own way and have them feel like they have achieved what they've achieved. And so it's, I think our kids are not embittered at all by the fact that we gave away the company.
Yeah, I've just been going back through the book of Joshua, and it's just interesting when the allotment of the land is given. There's an understanding that, okay, this is my inheritance. Now I have to go fight for it. Now I have to actually, like, none of the other tribes, Judah says, hey, Simeon, you're going to come along with me on this, like, because the rest of them aren't. And we'll split it and all of that. But you got to go fight for your inheritance. I love that approach. And I think that verse in Proverbs gets misunderstood a lot of times about, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Like, inheritance is so much more than money. My goodness.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I mean, how much more important is it to instill the right value system? And so it's, Bible says that God's people are a peculiar people. And I think we need more peculiar examples, like the example that you've set, Alan. And that's why I say that you guys are living legends, because this is what a testament to the power of the gospel moving on somebody's heart and changing their whole family tree. And the legacy is just and the example that you set and the motivation, like I've heard you talk about this in the past, just the impact on your employees when they know that they're not working just for, your grandkids and great grandkids inheritance. Like, they're working and knowing that their impact is going to make a difference, over in India. I mean, right away, and so just thank you for the example that you set. Anything else you want to say before we sign off here, in terms of parting wisdom?
I think the fact that the Bible is so full of warnings about money I'd say I just would encourage people to read those verses and heed those warnings and figure out individually. Everybody's so what is going to be different, and God's going to guide different people in different ways from a lifestyle standpoint, et cetera. But to do it on purpose, don't do what comes naturally in this area of money. You will mess up if you do what comes naturally, and if you follow the world system, it will not take you to freedom and to where you want to be. God doesn't want your money. He wants you. He wants all of you. And because he wants you to hold your money with an open hand, because there's something about money. He says you can't serve God and money. There's something about money that's corrosive, and that's, and so I'd say to hold everything you have with an open hand, and not get into this mentality of I've earned this, it's mine, but instead everything has come from God, belongs to God. I'm not even my own. I've been bought with a price, and live your life that way. And sometimes that may seem scary to people, but again, God doesn't need your money. He is God, and he deserves our total obedience. But he's also a loving Heavenly Father that wants to give us good things. And a lot of times we don't receive some of those good things, because because this whole area of money trips us up. And it was a big deal 2,000 years ago. Jesus talked a heck of a lot about it 2,000 years ago. It's a bigger deal today. Just be careful and do it on purpose, so that things can be a blessing and not a curse to you.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. Alan, thank you for your time, sharing your wisdom and your, the example that you've set. Thank you for what you're sharing with God's people and with people that don't know the Lord. And I just know that is magnetic for the Lord. And so thanks for what you're doing, and appreciate you.
Great. Darren, thank you for allowing me to be on. I really appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if so, we would greatly appreciate it if you'd leave us a quick rating and review for the Christianity and Business podcast on iTunes. You can get more information about HCU's Center for Christianity and Business and sign up to receive free access to all issues of the Christian Business Review Journal by visiting our website at christianityandbusiness.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep integrating biblical values into your business.